and Nick Saban.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I really appreciate that. This has been very inspirational today. But I must admit to you that it's not always been that way. If you remember back the first year that we were at Alabama, we lost to ULM. You may not even know what that stands for, University of Louisiana Monroe. And it was the most humiliating defeat, maybe, of my entire coaching career. I think we had 5 guys suspended by the NCAA. We had 3 more suspended for disciplinary reasons. We played horrible in the game. I was almost ashamed of how we represented the university in the program. We fumbled the ball 6 times. So we ended up getting beat in the game, so everybody's disappointed, fans are disappointed, coaches are disappointed, players are disappointed. But when you're the coach, you have to go in the locker room after the game and try to inspire your guys when they didn't perform very well. Then you have to go to the press conference and try to explain to people why you played so poorly. Then you have to go to the recruiting room and try to talk to the recruits that it's not really going to be this way in the future. So then, after all that humiliation, I get in my car to drive home, and I don't have any gas in the car. So now I got to stop at a self-serve, put some gas in the car, and I used to wear my LSU national championship ring. So I go to pay the guy, and the guy says, "Wow, what's that ring?" And I said, "That's a national championship ring, and we're going to do the same thing here at Alabama." And the guy looks at me and says, "We'll never do it as long as that Nick Saban is the coach."
Well, Coach, I would like to say it is a delight to have this opportunity to be able to ask you a few questions. I'm quite sure our audience is going to be inspired by the words that you're going to give them. We're going to talk briefly about prayer, leadership, how that's played a role in helping you be a successful coach, as well as a businessman. So my first question to you today is, how has your faith shaped your approach to coaching and leadership?
Well, so I think the first thing the way I would answer that question is, I started out being sort of a transactional leader. In other words, everything was about being successful. Everything was about winning the game. And so when we won the game, I was happy. It's positive. I gave people sort of positive self-gratification that they needed, which most people need because they remember the way you make them feel. So I wanted them to feel good. But also when we didn't have success and we lost, because everything was based on the outcome, I criticized people, I was hard on people, and sometimes when things don't go well and you have sort of a negative circumstance and you don't teach the people, it creates a tremendous effect on morale. Because you're not being positive, you're not using the failings as a teaching moment. So the first 5 or 6 years I was a head coach really wasn't very successful. And really what changed me philosophically as a coach and how I impacted and affected people is when I was a coach at Michigan State in 1998, we were 4-5. So we were going to play Ohio State. At Ohio State, the 10th game of the season, they were undefeated and number 1 in the country from the first day of the season. So I think we have no chance to win the game. I don't know what to say to the team because everything to me is based on winning. Everything is based on the outcome. And I don't know how we're ever going to get the outcome playing against this really, really good team. So I call a psychiatrist and I say, I don't know what to say to our team because I don't think we have any chance to win. And he says, you just need to focus on one play at a time, focus on what it takes to get the outcome, forget about the outcome. There's no external factors, there's no scoreboard. Play one play at a time like it has a history and a life of its own. And quit being a transactional leader, but be a transformational leader. Be somebody that somebody can emulate. Set a good example. Care about other people to help them be successful and affect themselves in a positive way. Not to affect you in a positive way, but to affect them. So have a vision. Care. Show people that you play. Players don't care what you know until they know that you care. So inspire them to be the best version of themselves, but get them to focus on the present moment. What's happening now? So play one play at a time, no scoreboard, no external factors. You know, I've heard you get up here and speak about the media and social media and all those things that affect us in some ways. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just go give 100% effort, one play at a time. And
right.
Lo and behold, we went and won that game. We upset the number one team in the country. They were talking about firing me at Michigan State. We were 4-5. So, and if you look at our record from the 10th game of the season in 1998 till present day, retirement, it was pretty good. But it was all because we changed to become a transformational leader. How do you affect other people? How do you serve other people? In fact, I ask the question a lot to the players, how do you pray? Do you pray to be blessed, or do you pray to be a blessing? You know, somebody else has to bless you. You can be a blessing to everybody that you meet. You can impact every person that you meet in some positive way to give them some positive direction and what will help them be more successful, more self-fulfilled, happier in their life, which was the whole goal of what we were trying to accomplish. We wanted everybody in the program to be more successful in life because they were involved in the program. So this change in leadership style was probably the number one thing that impacted me and allowed me to affect the people in our organization in a much more positive way.
Well, secondly, Coach, could you share a moment when your faith helped you overcome a significant challenge in your personal life as well as in your coaching career?
Well, look, I think a little different maybe. I think church faith is so important to moral development, to doing the right thing. So if it wasn't for my faith, I'm not sure that I could stand up for some of the things that we've stood up for through the years. In other words, you know, when everybody gets up here and speaks in front of the group, including myself, we're all a little nervous, a little anxious about doing that. And if anybody in the crowd has ever had to do that before, you're a little nervous and you're a little anxious about getting up and speak because you're thinking of one thing. What's everybody going to think of me? And sometimes we don't do the right thing because we're afraid of what people are going to think if we do. And a great example of that is one of our players, I'm not going to call his name, but he had a terrible accident, had a great pro career, ran into somebody going 150 miles an hour while he was drinking, and he had friends that could have told him, you shouldn't be driving. I'm not going to let you drive. But why did those friends not do that? Because they were afraid of what the guy would have thought of them if they told him to do that. So I guess my faith has helped me always have the courage and the confidence to be able to tell people this is the right thing to do and not really care so much about what they think of me for telling them to do what's in their best interest, how that can impact them in a more positive way, even when they were ready to make a decision that may have a negative impact on their future. So that's what faith has done for me, I think, and my belief in how important it is for church to help us all do the right thing.
Okay. Well, Coach, we are here at the National Day of Prayer. Prayer is the major theme of what we're trying to do here. So I wanted to ask you, prayer is an essential part of our faith. How do you incorporate prayer into your daily routine? And how does it impact your decision-making process?
Well, I think, again, it's all about trying to do what's right. And I think if you're going to be a leader and you're going to set a good example, you have to be somebody that somebody wants to emulate. I already sort of hit that and how important it is to be a leader. So the challenge to me every day is I pray not to get angry, not to be emotional, because when I do those things, I'm not a very good teacher. And I want to be a good teacher every day so that I can teach people to improve and get better, and that's going to help them have a better chance to be successful. So, coaching is teaching. Teaching is ability to inspire learning. So I pray that I can always be in the best state to be able to impact and influence people in a positive way because of the way I present myself.
The theme of our event, Be the Light, comes from Matthew 5:14 that says, "We are the light of the world, a city built on a hill that cannot be hidden." What does this verse mean to you, and how do you strive to be the light in the lives of your players, coaching staff, and community?
Well, setting a good example. Like, I'm sure you've all heard the term lank. That all came from me getting up in front of the players when we weren't playing very well. We lost to Texas. We didn't play very well at South Florida, and we were getting criticized like crazy. And I said, let all naysayers know. And our players went and marketed that. I mean, it was something that resonated with them, that was able to take a negative situation and turn it into a positive so that we could have some success as a team. There can be no great victories in life unless there's tremendous adversity. And I think how we respond to adversity and how we've taught people to respond to adversity has been very key to being successful. And I learned this lesson when I was coaching at Ohio State in 1981. We had lost 2 games at Ohio State, and we were going to play Michigan, who was undefeated and number 1 in the country. And Woody Hayes was not the coach then. This was the 3rd year after he had been fired as a coach. And the first time we ever asked him to come back and speak to the team. Well, we had a terrible week of practice. Everybody was pointing the finger at each other because the media, as we set up here and talked about earlier, was criticizing everybody in a very negative way and placing blame on everybody for the circumstance that we were in. So we had a terrible, I don't think the coaches thought we could win. The players didn't think we could win. There was no togetherness on the team. Everything was bad. So we have this thing called a senior tackle. You have it in the stadium for the seniors. It's before the last game, and they go tackle a dummy. So we had Coach Hayes come and speak to the team. And his message was, there can be no great victories in life unless there's tremendous adversity. And he equated the war in the Pacific as being the greatest military victory of all time because of Pearl Harbor to the challenges that were facing us to go play Michigan. We're 17-point underdogs. They're undefeated. They're number 1. There's 105,000 people rooting against us. It's bad weather. There's no way we're going to win this game. And he changed the negative attitude of everybody into a positive attitude because we saw that as a great opportunity to have a great victory because of all the adversity that confronted us. No different than the beginning of this season when we came up with let all naysayers know. So we went and won the game. We won the game, I think, 14-9. Beat the number 1 team in the country because we took a negative attitude and turned it into a positive challenge for everyone, and they looked at it as a great opportunity to have a great victory. So I was a young coach then, so I was like, wow, this young team we have has finally arrived. We beat the number 1 team in the country. We could beat anybody that we played now. But it's the last game of the season. But then Coach Hayes walks in the locker room after the game, and I'm thinking, we can beat anybody? And he says, I'm glad we don't have a game next week. And I looked at him funny, and he said, You know, we played ASS over Tea Kettle today, and there's not a team in the country we'd beat next week. So, but the lesson learned, and I think that through your faith, you can look at things even that are not maybe going the way they should by looking at opportunity and having a positive attitude about things. You know, just put yourself in my position. I'm sure a lot of you have had adolescent children. Sometimes they disappoint you. We have 125 of them on our team. So if I came to work every day thinking everything was going to go perfectly, I'd probably get pretty disappointed. But you know, in 1986, a priest that I sat by at a banquet like this told me to read this book called The Road Less Traveled. It was a spiritual development, positive attitude book. I said, that'd be great, because I was trying to grow and learn, you know, as a coach at that time. And the first line in the book says, life is difficult. And I'm thinking to myself, this priest is crazy. But really, when you look and you read the book, you found out that if your expectation in your life was that everything was always going to go perfectly, and you weren't going to have ups and downs and disappointments that occurred. Sometimes you create them, sometimes you have nothing to do with how they're created. That you have a very difficult time keeping a positive perspective on your attitude and how you're going to approach things. But if your expectation is there will be difficulties and you will have adversity to overcome, that you'll have a much greater opportunity to always be positive and manage and handle those things in a positive way. So that was always one of the pillars of being a champion for us, was having a positive attitude. I used to walk by Derrick Henry every day, be 104 degrees outside, we're in fall camp, and I said, Derrick, how you doing today? And he said, I'm just glad to be here, Coach. So if you say that to yourself, you're glad to be here, makes you appreciate all the things that we have and not focus on the things that we don't have. So that was always one of the pillars of our program, was always try to be positive, not to be too negative. And I know you've seen me break a few headsets on the sidelines, but...
In what ways do you encourage your players to develop not only as athletes, but also as individuals of strong character and faith?
Well, you know, everybody always says there's no I in team. And I agree with that. But there is an I in win. And the I stands for the individual that makes the team what it is. Because in every circumstance where we have a failing, it's because of an individual error or somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. So every player that we recruited at Alabama for 17 years, I would call in when they were freshmen, and I would say, tell me what you want to accomplish while you're here at the University of Alabama. And the guy would say, I want to graduate and play in the NFL someday. And my next question to him is, do you know what that entails? And most guys could not answer that question. So this is what you call the process, which people ask me all the time about. It's just a definition of what you have to do to accomplish the goals that you have. And then I tell the guy, once we define what he has to do to graduate from college, what he has to do to be the best player he can be, I say to him, I'm going to come to you on occasion and ask you, how are you doing? How do you think you're doing? And if you say yes, I'm going to ask you why, because you're doing the right things. And if you say no, I'm going to ask you why, and you're going to say, this is what I'm not doing, this is what I need to improve at. Because everybody needs to be able to self-assess. If you're going to improve as a person, you have to be able to self-assess. Kobe Bryant came and talked to our team. He sat in a chair on the stage, in a room like this, the team room, and he sat there for an hour and 45 minutes, and all he talked about was how do you have to edit your behavior to accomplish the goals that you have. So once you establish these goals and once you establish what you have to do to accomplish the goals, the most difficult thing for all of us is have the discipline to execute it every day. And you've probably heard discipline defined as do what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, the way it's supposed to get done, do the right thing, the right way, the right time, all the time. But I'm talking about self-discipline. We answer hundreds of questions every day that come down to these two things. Here's something I know I'm supposed to do that I really don't want to do. Can you make yourself do it? And then over here, there's something you know you're not supposed to do, but you want to do it. Can you keep yourself from it? If you can make those choices and decisions the right way, you're always going to be able to stay on the path to accomplish the goals. But we're talking about feeling versus choice. You're going to do what you feel like doing, or you're going to choose to do the things you need to do to be successful. And there's a difference in that. You know, same thing. Children say, I don't feel like studying. I don't feel like going to work today. I don't feel like going to class. I don't care what you feel like doing. If you want to graduate from college, you want to graduate from school, you want to develop a career, you need to choose to study, you need to choose to go to class, you need to choose to do the things you need to do. And that takes a lot of discipline from all of us. Strength, faith, courage to do the right things. And that is how I've always tried to challenge players. Make it about them. You know, how are these things going to impact and affect you? And, you know, sometimes when you talk about the group, people are basically, I hate to say this in church, but they're basically selfish, self-absorbed, and ambitious. It's basically what people are. Now, that can be a good thing if it's channeled in the right direction, or it can be a really, really bad thing. So I've spent my whole career trying to get people to take those things and funnel them in the right direction. You know, we had a player once who was a freshman, and he started as a freshman. I'm not going to call his name, and he was a great player, and he was a great leader. But when he was a freshman, and he was a starter, Friday night, he's walking on campus, he goes by a fraternity house, he's an African American, and somebody yells some racial slurs at him from the fraternity house, and he goes and gets in a confrontation with them. Police come, get ready to arrest him, but they call me instead, so they bring the guy to me. And I tell him, I said, look, you can't be a part of the team here. You can't represent the University of Alabama. You can't represent our program and get in confrontations with people regardless of the circumstance. And he comes across the table and he says, in my neighborhood, when somebody calls you a name like that, you're going to sort of straighten them out and prove your manhood, and that's not going to happen. And I said, I agree with you. It should never happen. You're right. But you're going to be a first-round draft pick. First-round draft pick. You're going to make $30 million when you become a first-round draft pick. If that cop would have taken you and given you an assault charge, you would be a third-round draft pick. And instead of making $30 million, you'd make $3 million. And even though I agree with you, is it worth $27 million to be right? And he looks at me and he says, Coach, you'll never have another problem with me again. So these are the kinds of things that we always try to do to take those three things, selfish, self-absorbed, ambitious, and channel them people in the right direction so that they could be successful and use those things actually to help them. But the most difficult challenge that I had as a coach in all the years was, and somebody talked about it, media, social media, and how what other people think affect people. It amazes me that some guy sits in his basement, probably in his mom's house, probably in his underwear, probably overweight, and he puts something on the internet and anybody cares about what he thinks. But it would affect our players. And I was constantly trying to get them not to be affected by external factors, what other people think. You trusting and believing and doing the right things is so much more important than what somebody else thinks. So that was one of the most challenging things, to not let external factors, and you've heard me use the term rat poison, affect what you do and how you do it.
Right. Well, Coach, I'm definitely going to take your advice on social media. Because I have 9 critics out there. No matter what I do, if Jesus came here and walked on water, they would still have something negative to say. So I'm going to make sure that I embrace that concept that you just gave for me to be able to deal with the citizens of Irondale.
Yeah, but the one thing you got to remember, the citizens who are happy with what you're doing, they're not getting on the internet. It's only the people that have something bad to say. So let's don't be defined by those people.
Well, I appreciate that advice.
And I want to say one other thing. You know, when one of the reverends that got up here and spoke, talked about thank you. You know, every thank you has an IOU. You never think about it that way. And I learned this when I was 9 years old. I was so little, the only position I could play on the baseball team was second base, because that's the only place I could get the ball to first when they hit me the ball. So my coach's name was Jocko Anderson. And he used to stay after practice and hit me ground balls. And my dad came and picked me up one day, and after I stayed extra to catch ground balls, and I said, Jocko, thanks, man. I really thank you for, helping me practice more. And when we were walking off, my dad said, that thank you has an IOU. And I looked at him like, what do you mean by that? We're always willing to thank people, but when we thank them, we also owe them our best effort, our best decision-making, our best leadership, our best ability to influence people in a positive way, to impact them so they can have better success. So it's not just how it affects us, it's how we can affect someone else. And that's what I learned that day in Carolina on Little League baseball team.